All right, welcome to Words of the Wise. Today we have Officer David Easley. He has over 30 years of experience in law enforcement, has worked in a variety of agencies all across Texas, and is currently working for Austin Community College District Police Department. I am so excited to welcome Officer David Easley. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Paige. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to share your story. I know we talked offline and you've been in this career for a long time. And like I said, you've been, working for a number of different agencies and have a lot of different perspectives. And so I would love to kind of hop in and get some background on you and what made you pursue law enforcement.
Well, I had an uncle who was sheriff in the county where we lived here in Texas, and I grew up around him, and he was kind of my hero. He was also a cowboy from back in the day, and I learned a lot about things from him, about how to treat people and about everything I know about cows and horses. I learned from him as well, and it just after I reached adulthood, I got my degree in my associate's degree in livestock and ranch management, and then I realized that that doesn't pay a lot, and so I decided, well, I'm going to give law enforcement a try. I started working at the jail in Bastrop County in September of 1990. I turned 22 working in the control room of the Bastrop County Jail, and then proceeded from there.
And so you knew from an early age, because your uncle was your hero, someone you looked up to, you knew from an early age, law enforcement is for me. This is the career that I want to pursue.
Yes, yeah, and my stepdad, who came along a little later when I was about 6 or 7 years old, wound up getting into law enforcement as well. So basically, from that age, I grew up in a law enforcement family. So yeah, I was just kind of immersed in it.
And so tell me a little bit about once you were sworn in, once you got into law enforcement, what was your trajectory from there? What did your career look like over those 30 years?
Well, I worked for the first few years as a patrol deputy in Bastrop County, and then I was promoted to investigator. And being in a rural county, we worked everything. We worked everything from misdemeanor thefts to homicides. So I
Mm.
got a wide, vast array of experience doing that. And even though it was a small agency and we didn't have the call volume of a big city or a large agency, I wouldn't take for the level of experience that I got there. Mostly how to listen to people.
Mm.
And then I reached the age of 38, and I decided that if I was going to get serious about this after 15 years and make it a real career, I needed to go somewhere where I could make some better money to support my family because rural agency, no industry, et cetera, very small tax base, didn't pay much. So I applied for and was hired with the City of Austin, Texas Police Department. And I had to go through an entire second academy at that point because at that time they were not accepting laterals. So I started their academy in November of 2005, graduated in
Interesting.
June of 2006, and it began working on the day shift patrol in one of the hottest sectors in the city and loved every second and every minute of it. And I worked on the streets for, gosh, I guess about, I lost track of time really, several years, we'll just say. And then and I wound up going to a night shift and worked night shift for a long time. And it was just a rat race, man. It was on fire. And after a few years of that, I was like, okay, I need some family time. Applied for, was accepted into the district representative unit for the Austin Police Department for the sector that I currently worked in and one other sector, which is basically we were community liaisons, community policing. We focused on crime prevention. We did crime prevention surveys for residences and businesses and things like that. Um, I was in there for about 5 years. And then the last couple of years, they kind of started sort of leaning towards having to deal with more of the social justice individuals, et cetera, et cetera. And that was not really my cup of tea. So I talked to my sergeant and said, "Hey, man, I'm ready to go back to the street and go back to do police work." And so I went back, worked an evening shift for the last 5 years of my career there at Austin Police Department. I retired from there in July of 2022.
Amazing. So you went through two academies?
I did.
That's really interesting. I've never heard anyone tell me that they went through two separate academies. So
Yep.
you must have really wanted to work for Austin PD to go.
I did. I did. When I went to Austin Police Department, they had a stellar reputation as a law enforcement agency and had for my entire career in law enforcement up to that point in time. Uh, and so, yeah, they were kind of like the big brother next door. They're in the uh, I live and reside in Bastrop County, and that's where I had worked. As I mentioned earlier, it was a small rural county, large geographically, but small in population, say. And we're adjacent to Travis County, which Austin is the county seat for, as well as the state capital. And like I said, they were always the big brother next door. And I
Mhm.
was like, I might as well try it. I mean, everybody has their fair share of morons because for a long time I was scared because I'm like, right now I'm kind of a bigger fish in a small pond.
Mm.
And I'm like, do I want to get out of my comfort zone? I was like, I'll never know unless I try. And like I said, I applied, they accepted me. And 16 years later, when I was ready to call it quits, it's like, uh, wow, it was an amazing experience.
That's
I wouldn't
awesome.
take, yeah, I wouldn't take for not a single day that I worked at Austin PD.
That's amazing. And I would love to get into that in a little bit. But I do think that in order for people to understand how you got where you are, it's important to know where you came from. And so I would like to talk about you in your early life. I know you said that you had your uncle who was, in law enforcement and it really inspired you. What was your upbringing like? Was it,
So starting out, the first 6 years was pretty rough. I mentioned my stepdad earlier. Now, once he came into my life from that point forward, I had probably an idyllic childhood. But prior to that, my biological father was extremely physically abusive to my mother. And
Mm,
of course, I was extremely close to my mother. Uh, and I watched that happen over that time period, for that first 6 years of my life. And I feel like a lot of people can go when they're raised in that environment, especially young male children, young men, is they can go one of two directions. They can either continue the cycle of abuse when they grow up and get into the relationships, or I feel like they mostly or will go 180, go complete opposite direction. Luckily, I went 180, complete opposite direction. In fact, family violence cases, family violence calls kind of came to be my niche. I think a
mm,
lot of law enforcement officers kind of find their niche, their thing that they become really good at working. For some officers, it's DWIs or DUIs in another state. Um, and for me, it was family violence cases. I And so, really, unbeknownst to me, as I continued on in life, I didn't really realize the amount of trauma that I suffered watching it. Even though my biological father never physically did anything to me, watching that person that I cared about and loved so dearly being abused like that was really rough. And fast forward to uh, 2010, uh, my mother was very sick, and oh well, let me back up just a little bit. I'd like to relate one instance uh, that really was an incredible catalyst for me. My mother finally left my biological father, and uh, the uncle that I mentioned, he was my mother's sister's husband. And I think he was the catalyst to finally talk her into leaving. I know we tried
Mhm.
for a long time. And we left and we moved from Houston, where we were living, back here to Bastrop County. And we were staying with my aunt and uncle. And my mother had, in the meantime, met my stepfather, who came to be my stepfather, and he was staying with us as well. And it was one Saturday morning, December 7th, 1974. I remember it was a Saturday morning. I was in bed asleep, and I remember my mother coming and waking me up and saying, "David Wayne, you need to get up. Your daddy's coming." And so I was instantly awake because I knew that was not a good thing, the way she was saying it. And I had to do exactly what she said when she said it. And so she grabbed me and carried me into a bathroom, and we hid. My biological father came in the door. My soon to be stepfather had decided he wanted to try and just talk him down and keep it peaceful. And he just played like he was still asleep. Well, biological father came in, grabbed the shotgun out of my uncle's gun rack, went in. He had a pistol with him. He beat my stepfather about the head and asking him where my mother and I were. And my stepfather wouldn't tell. He stuck a shotgun, 12 gauge shotgun loaded with buckshot, to my stepfather's leg and shot him point blank range with that shotgun. And when the shotgun went off, my mother tried to peek out the bathroom door, and my bio father saw it and instantly shoved the door open and grabbed her and pulled her out. Uh, he racked the shotgun and he stuck the shotgun in her stomach and pulled the trigger, and the shotgun misfired.
Mhm.
Uh, I stayed in the bathroom, and she had been in the process of trying to put me out the bathroom window when for the gunshots went off. And I just stayed. I knew just to stay put, stay put, stay put. How, I don't know, but my mother managed to talk him down, and he left without doing anything else to her or looking for me further. Knowing what I know now, I fully believe that he intended to kill her and me,
Wow.
and then probably commit suicide. That's a summation on my part, strictly assumption, but that's based on my professional experience now. That's what I think he was going to do. She talked him into leaving. He left. He went one direction. He had pulled the phones out of the wall. You and I visited a little bit earlier offline about, everybody's cell phone. Like back then, it was all landlines. The phones are connected to the wall, and without that connection, there's no phone. Well, my uncle was at a groundbreaking ceremony, ironically enough, for a new county jail, and he was just going for the groundbreaking, was going to be coming home, and he had left his handheld radio at the house. My
Mm.
mother saw it. She got on it. Small county. The dispatcher runs over, tells my uncle what's going on, and he and his chief deputy get in the chief deputy's car. They head out to his house where we were. At some point in time, my bio father had turned around and goes back in towards town, meeting my uncle and the chief deputy on the highway. They who then turn around, follow him to the intersection where they all come to a screeching halt. He fires one shot at my uncle, who's getting out of the car. The bullet grazed his hat. I saw the hat where the bullet had grazed it. My uncle fires one shot in the air with a shotgun. My biological father's reloading his rifle. He's working the bolt on a rifle. And so my uncle has no choice at that point but to end it.
Wow.
And he shoots and kills my biological father at that point. And so there was that we all lived through. And then I fast forward to after I'm already Austin PD. I think it was 2010, but my mother had been very sick for a long time with COPD, and then she wound up being diagnosed with colon cancer. She elected to have surgery to have the cancer removed, and I'm asking her if are you, mom, are you sure you want to do this? And she looks at me and she says, yes. She says, I'm tired. I'm very tired. So I have a feeling she knew how this inevitably was going to turn out. I had her medical power of attorney because she said that dad, who I refer to my stepdad as because he raised me and he's been an actual dad to me. And she said, your dad won't be able to do it. She said she made me promise that if they had to intubate her because of the COPD, that she would not be intubated for more than 3 days, and I would have them pull the tube. Well, she goes through the surgery. She comes out of the surgery fine, and she's in recovery. She's in a regular room. She's doing fine. I'm visiting with her one evening, and just all of a sudden she starts having incredible abdominal pains. I get the doctor in there. They wind up rushing her to surgery. Come to find out, the stitches had leaked, and she wound up getting sepsis.
Yeah.
And that was all due to the prednisone, the steroid medication that she took for so many years for her lungs. Uh, she wound up being, I guess it would be calling, they say that she was in a coma, but she was intubated. She was out for 8 days, no response, nothing. Finally, like on the eighth day, she came to, and I was standing by her bed. And again, another irony, her main doctor, happened to be in the room when she came to. She woke up and she looked at me and started shaking her head no. And I was like a little child again. You know, I'm trying to explain, Mom, you're very sick, but they think you can pull through. And she's just shaking her head no. And I just kind of threw up my hands and turned to the doctor and said, Doctor, I need you to pull the tube. And the doctor was just, no, she's got a chance. She's got a chance. I said, Doctor, pull the tube. She wants the tube out, pull the tube. And he just kind of sighed and his shoulders sagged, and they pulled the tube. And I stayed with her for a little while. We visited. Actually, we visited for a long while. My dad was there and we talked, and it seemed like she was getting better. She was breathing on her own. She was doing okay. And I was like, well, I'm going to, go home and take a shower, Mom. You need to get some rest. And I did that. And I'm on the way back to the hospital later that night. And the charge nurse calls me and said, you need to get up here. And I got there and she was pretty much gone. But we had spent several really incredible hours together where she had seemingly got better. And we just visited, and she told us what her expectations were, what she wanted. She told Dad and I to, she said, y'all take care of one another. and uh, and my little black dog, she had this little dachshund that was like her second child. And and then she just quietly and peacefully passed away about an hour or so later. Well, moving forward, I basically retreated and didn't even realize I was doing it. I quit interacting with my kids, my family, my wife at the time. The only place that I functioned was at work.
Mm.
And so everybody at work thought I was good because I was still handling business. I was senior officer on the shift, and I felt like I had these guys that I need to take care of. I have lots of bad guys out here in this sector that are doing bad stuff. I have to stay focused on it. So I focused on work and was doing great at work.
Right.
But I didn't take care of anything at home. I dug myself like the deepest financial hole ever. And next thing I know, I get up one afternoon after working the night before. I'm going to work night shift again that night. And I go in the living room, and my wife has her car packed up, has a bag, and she just waited for me to wake up to tell me that she's leaving. And so then she left me. And I was like, okay. And called in and told my sergeant, said, hey man, I'm going to be a little late. My wife just left me. He's like, well, all right, man, take your time. And then he hangs up and he calls me back in about 15 minutes. He's like, dude, if you want to take off, you don't need to come in. I'm like, yeah, no, I got nothing else to do here except stew. And so no, I'll come in. I'm just going to take my time. So I went in and just things just continued to gradually go downhill. And well, my wife and I, we never really broke contact. We stayed in contact with one another. We got a divorce. It was amicable. We just agreed on everything and done deal. And but even after we got the divorce, we would still text each other. We would still talk. So I'm trying to get back on the horse. I'm going out one night and I'm texting with her and saying, hey, where you at tonight? She said, well, I have a date. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's kind of hit hard, right? And and I said, well, hey, well, let me know where you're at because I don't really want to run into y'all. And she wouldn't say anything. I said, no, seriously, just tell me where you guys are going to be so I don't go there and we run into each other and it becomes awkward and what have you. She just responded, I'm at his house. That hit me like a ton of bricks. Uh, the next thing I know, I'm on the phone. I tried calling later on that night. I tried calling two of my best friends. Neither one of them answered. And I wound up, why, I don't know, but I called my sergeant. And I said, hey, man, look, I'm sorry I bothered you. And he's like, no, 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 no. He said, what's going on? What's going on? And I kind of told him a little bit. He said, and he actually lived in the same county that I do. And he said, hey, come on to my house, man. Come on over here. And he was single, or not single, but he and his wife had no children or anything. I mean, dude stayed up and played Xbox all night because he worked night shift. So I get over there and I talked to him for a little bit. And I said some things. I said, I don't even know why I'm continuing. I don't know. I have screwed everything up. I'm done, Mike. And he's like, look, man. He said, once you get some rest, I'm gonna put you to bed, dude. And he puts me to bed. He said, we'll go get breakfast tomorrow. So he puts me in there one of their spare rooms, and the next day we go and he buys me breakfast. And he talks to me. He says, look, man, you said some things last night that had me really genuinely concerned about you, and I'm worried about you. And he said, I'm thinking maybe you could talk to our peer support guy. At that time, our peer support consisted of one person, a sergeant. And I had to talk to him about this, so I'm not going to name him. Uh, but he said, well, do you know so and so? And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, why don't you call him and set up to go talk to him? And I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll do that. And my sergeant, he kept us on the down low. He could have, expressed concerns to the lieutenant, had me put on his admin duty and all kinds of stuff, but he didn't. And at that point in time, I was extremely vulnerable. I feel like if someone had approached me and stuck a gun in my face, I probably would just throw my hands up and say, dude, whatever. There's nothing you can do to me to make me hurt any worse than I do right now.
Yeah.
So I had the meeting with the peer support individual, and I don't know why, but I just walked into his office and I laid out my whole life story for him. And he's sitting there and he goes, David, he said, I don't have any diplomas on the wall or anything like this, but he said, dude, I said, I'm pretty sure you have PTSD.
Mm.
He said, I think maybe you could benefit from talking to Dr. Logan. Dr. Carol Logan was our psychologist, the department psychologist. So I immediately went, whoa, 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 whoa. Department psychologist? I don't think so. He goes, no, Lacey, hear me out. He said, he said, if you go in there on your own, it's not mandated by the department. He said, just like any other therapist or psychologist, if you go in there on your own and you are not a danger to yourself or others, and you're capable of doing your job, then everything is confidential, just like if you went to private pay. Mm-hmm. I'm like, seriously? And he said, yes. I said, I had no clue. I thought if you just went to, the department psychologist, then the department automatically is privy to everything. He said, absolutely not. He said, that is a fallacy and that is not true. He said, like I said, just like it with any other psychologist or therapist, danger yourself or others, can't function in your job, you're not safe to do your job. I said, okay, I will go talk to her. So he immediately picks up the phone, but because of his role as peer support, he had a direct line to her and he worked very closely with her. And he called her and he tells her what's going on. And so he sets up an appointment for me. And I go over and again, I tell Dr. Logan everything. I just laid everything out for her. And she told me that she asked me if I'd ever heard of EMDR.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to try real hard because I just always said EMDR, but I think it's eye movement, desensitization, and I can't remember the other part. So we might have to edit that one.
Okay.
But anyway, and I'm like, and she starts explaining EMDR to me, what she does. And I'm like, I almost sounds kind of like hypnosis. And she's like, no, 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 it's not hypnosis. You'll be fully aware of everything that's going on. And I said, I don't understand how it works. And the way she explained it to me, she said, is basically like where the physical brain meets the mental psyche of your brain. She said those traumatic memories that you have, because I did have them. My side note here, I always had to have the television on or a
Mm-hmm.
radio on to go to sleep at night because I needed something to distract me. Because if I didn't, then those memories of the stuff, the abuse that my mom suffered, and that one particular Saturday, those things would pop up, and everything was vivid, like it had just happened. The sights, the smells, the sounds, everything. I could describe my biological father's shirt that he had on as he reached in and grabbed my mother, and I could describe everything to a T. And I had to have something to drown that stuff out. And who knows when the last time was that I had had a decent night's sleep. Definitely before my mother had passed away. And so uh, she said, what EMDR does, she said, you will bring up those memories and you will go through them again. She said, but this time it will allow your brain to properly file those memories away. She said, those traumatic memories, the first time, your brain did not know what to do with them. It did not know how to file them away. So they just stay in the forefront like they just happened because they've never been filed and allowed to fade like a normal memory is supposed to do. I'm like, okay, I will try. And so I went through 3 or 4 EMDR treatments. And I will, if anybody is thinking about them, I will tell you up front, they are not fun to do because you absolutely do relive each event in full technicolor. Uh, and it is not fun to do. And after I finished the first one, Dr. Logan told me, okay, she said, go home. She said, don't do anything more complicated than watching cartoons on television. And I said, okay. And she said, then get you a good night's sleep. And then your brain will, like a computer, will reboot and you're going to have a different outlook tomorrow. I'm like, okay, sure. I did. My youngest son, who was still living with me at the time, was excited about only having to watch cartoons because he liked certain cartoons on television. Even though he was a teenager, he was a junior in high school. And so we watched cartoons together, went to bed that night, and I woke up the next day and I couldn't remember the last time I felt that good.
It's
I
amazing.
woke up happy, excited to meet the day, and just absolutely amazed at how I felt. And I'm like, this is almost too good to be true. And then, like I said, I went through 2 or 3 more. A couple of them had to do with the previous childhood trauma. and a couple had to do with actually work events that had piled on top. And what we, came to realize is that, or what I came to realize is that when I had to tell the doctor to pull the tube on my mother, and it put me back in that childhood place of being 110% helpless and unable to help and save the person that I cared most about in this world. And it just destroyed me.
Yeah.
And I had a good buddy that went through the EMDR treatments. He was a Fallujah Marine. And he and I went and had supper one night. And I'm like, man, I cannot believe how I could be in such bad shape one day and then just how these treatments could turn my life around. And he said, yeah, I can't either. And he said, my wife can't either. My wife is still not convinced just yet. And he asked me, he said, Dave, how many of these treatments you go through? I said, hey, 3 or 4. He said, I went through 63.
Whoa.
Yeah. Which, if you're not familiar with the Battle of Fallujah with the Marine Corps, you can look that up. Uh, if I understand correctly, that's basically their modern day Quezon, Iwo Jima,
Mhm.
etc. It was a vicious battle for the Marines that were there at that time, and yeah, so I could not imagine 63 EMDR treatments. But since those last ones, I I went to Dr. Logan for a while, spread my sessions out to a month, and then eventually quit going. Well, let me back up. I still did have anxiety issues, and I still do today have anxiety issues. I take a daily medication, an anti-anxiety medication, and because I had gone to my medical doctor and told him what was going on, he suggested I get on this. I talked to Dr. Logan. She thought it was a good idea as well. And so I started taking that, and I still take them to this day. We do a checkup. I do a checkup with my primary care doc every now and then, make sure that I'm still good with them and they're still working just great. And uh, and then, but I still had, I did fine without going to therapy for a while. And then things kind of started to build up again. And my wife, actually, I wound up getting remarried to a wonderful woman who is actually a survivor of child sexual abuse. And so occasionally now we compare therapy notes. So we help each other with that. Uh, but so I kind of lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
You're
I,
good.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say you're good, and I want to say that I appreciate you sharing your story, and I think that a lot of people listening can relate. I've talked to so many people in this profession who come from adverse childhood experiences, and we've talked offline, but I can deeply relate to a lot of the things that you're saying. Obviously, everyone has different stories.
Yeah.
I too came from an upbringing of domestic violence, and know when you're saying, like, I was getting chills when you were saying being that helpless child, because that's exactly how I felt, just so helpless and not knowing what to do. And then fast forward, and you're talking about on the surface being good, but behind closed doors and beneath the surface, it's a
Right.
completely different reality. And I'm shaking my head yes, because it's like, that's real.
Right.
We learn at a really early age to survive and to posture up and to keep going. And to everybody else, we do such a good job of putting on this face of, I'm good, everything's good. And I think to a certain extent, in some situations, especially when, you're at work or, in certain environments, it's necessary to do that, and it's
Yes.
required to do that. Um, but it's not always how you're feeling beneath
Right.
the surface. And even when you're saying, I did everything I could to not think about it, and all the things that you're talking about, the escaping, the numbing, the distracting, and how that had a downward spiral effect on your life. And I know a lot of other people can relate to that, of like not wanting to deal with the reality because it's so painful and so hard to deal with what's actually going on. And so you do everything you can to distract yourself from that. Um, and then even when you said, and I know it was a very brief moment when you said this, but when you said, I couldn't go to bed without a distraction,
Yes.
I felt that same way. And I tell people all the time, if you've ever heard me share my story, it was in a different context, but it was like I couldn't like take a bath by myself without like flashbacks. And so it was this constant trying to distract, trying to numb, escape the reality because you don't want to know what's down there and you don't want what you shoved so far down beneath the
Right.
surface to come up to the surface, but inevitably it always does, and you have to face it eventually because we know what happens when we don't. And I don't know if you view them as a mentor, but when you're talking to me and you said you called your sergeant, it seemed like he had your back, and
He did.
he was the one that was like, "Listen, I'm going to take care of you. Like I
Yes.
care about you. I'm going to take care of you, and this is what we're going to do." And that set the trajectory for your wellness. And so, a big kudos to that person. And I think it's another testament to leadership to say, hey,
Yes.
we got to take care of our people and pay attention. And it sounded like you were fortunate enough to have someone in that leadership role who cared about you, took care of you, gave you some next steps for wellness. And then further than that, you were working with an agency that also had the support that you needed when you needed it, in the
Yes.
form of a psychologist. And then, of course, the EMDR, which I've heard great things about EMDR. And I keep telling everyone, like, one day I'm going to go and do it because I've heard just amazing testimonials about what that does with trauma, and how it doesn't go away, but your response and your reactions to it
Yes.
change.
Yes.
And you can experience it without that reaction that you would have previously. So thank you for sharing. I know that was like a lot to unpack, but I wanted you to know that I was not only listening to you, but deeply relating to you, because a lot of the things that you were saying were that of my experience too, with, early on trying to survive and then later on trying to figure out how to thrive, you know?
Yes.
Um,
Yes. And I would just like to say about the men and women of the Austin Police Department. You mentioned my supervisor and the way that he took care of me, and because he did. And it's kind of funny because he's an atheist, and I would always tell him, God put you in my path, right? And he would just roll his eyes and go on with it. So we had that little joke going on. But that is the mindset of the majority of the men and women in the Austin Police Department. The kind of unofficial motto for everybody there is, I am my brother's keeper.
mm,
And uh, the by the time I left the department, the peer support program had expanded from that one individual sergeant to a sergeant, lieutenant, its own command, four full-time officers in the position. That's all they did is manage resources for officers in need, everything from trauma such as mine, officer involved shootings, uh, uh, dealing with substance abuse, alcohol abuse, mental health issues, you name it, they run the gamut, and everything is under the table as far
mm,
as officer's identity and such. It is none of that is made privy to the department or city records. And that is by design in order to
yeah,
maintain confidentiality of the officers. And I have, and then they, in addition to the four full time officers, they created a peer support volunteer program to where they sent officers who volunteered to peer support training, and then they were scattered throughout the department. It took a while before I felt like I was in a place where I could make space for other people uh, in those situations, but eventually I did. And I went to the training as well and became a peer support volunteer as well. And it was very gratifying to be able to give back to my brother and sister officers, to be able
100%.
to, yeah, if nothing else, just to make a phone call on their behalf to one of the full time guys and go, hey, Officer so and so needs help. This is what's going on. Um, to an officer who had come from another agency, another large agency, who an incident had occurred while she was on duty, where uh, some of her fellow officers from that other agency had been wounded, and I think one or two had been killed in the line of duty, all in the same incident. And I reached out to her and I said, "Hey, let's go grab lunch right quick." And she was pretty shaken, as anybody would be. She had a personal relationship with these officers that were involved in this incident, and I'm just like, "You just stay right here." And so I just get on the phone, made a phone call to her corporal, whom I knew, and I said, "Hey, corporal, got one of your troops here that probably needs to go home." And he says, "Is it so and so?" And I'm like, "Yes." He goes, "Absolutely. Tell her she's good. Just bring it in. She doesn't even need to come see me or anything. Just tell her come in and go home and check back in with me tomorrow." And so, like I said, that's the kind of people that are at that department, and that I grew up with as a cop there. And I love them to death. I have the greatest amount of respect and admiration for them. And I'm grateful for the department being that supportive of that peer support program.
Absolutely.
And I can't say how important it is. You mentioned earlier, to expand on something you said, that there are environments and situations where you need to have that tough exterior and where you need to have it all together. And I feel like first responders in general fall into that category. And while they're handling business, they need to have that. But first responders need an outlet after the call, after the shift. They need somewhere to go with that trauma that they experienced during their shift. Uh, we had a showdown where we all met up and we talked about calls through the night. If it was a bad call, we discussed it. The funny calls we laughed about. The sad calls we may even cry about. Who knows? But we had that release with each other. And then, of course, we all knew we had the peer support. And I had more than one officer just on the download come up to me and go, "Hey, Easley, aren't you one of the peer support guys?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm one of the volunteers, man." I said, "What do you need?" I said, "If I can't help you or give you a phone number, make a phone call. I can get you hooked up with the guys that can." I think what that volunteer program did is it put, uh, because, we're talking, 1,500 to 2,000 officers or before the defunding thing. And, uh, you know, the people in need, they may not feel comfortable talking to these guys that are full time because they don't know them. And so having those volunteers spread out throughout the department, somebody that works on a sister shift that they can just walk up to because they know them, they see them every day, they take calls with them and go, "Hey, I need some help." And it's everything is confidential. They basically swore us to confidentiality on that. I had one lieutenant reach out to me and ask me to speak to one of his officers because he felt there was an issue and he was afraid that if something didn't change, he was going to lose his job. And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely, LT." I said, "Just understand that I can't come back and give you any kind of report that that's the end of that. This, when we hang up, this is the last time I'll discuss him with you." Subject. And he's like, "Absolutely." He said, "Absolutely. I expect no less." And like, okay, cool. And so I had a conversation with that officer, but and he really, I it was kind of one of those deals that, man, listening if he wants to hear this. He doesn't really seem like he wants to hear anything that I'm saying, but I said it, and I emailed him some information, and I went on about my business. Uh, that lieutenant, a few weeks later, catches me in the hall, and he goes, "Hey, man, I'm just going to let you know that," he said, "I'm not going to ask any questions, but I do want to let you know that that officer, that was basically when he came into his disciplinary review, whatever, was a different officer. He was not the same guy that we've been dealing with, and whatever happened, thank you." And I'm like, "What do you mean, man?" I said,
That's
I just
nice.
said, "Okay." I said, "Good enough, LT, just let it go." And he's, so I can only assume that that officer did reach out to someone that I provided him with.
Yeah. And I think too, like the thing that comes to my mind when you talk about this is kind of a full circle moment where you had someone who, without you knowing or knowing that you needed it, took a look at you and said, I'm going to help you. I'm going to take you under my wing and I'm going to help you. I care about you. And then you ended up in a position to do that for others. And so,
Yeah,
how much do you think that sergeant impacted the way that you led throughout your career? Was it something that you knew was happening at the time, or do you think retrospectively it's like, oh, that was something that impacted the way that I help others and lead others? How do you think that that impacted kind of the trajectory of the rest of your career?
I don't feel like I would have been as quick to go and offer personal assistance like that until that sergeant did what he did for me. Because growing up as a baby cop in the era that I did, uh, starting out in the early '90s, I mean, I grew up as a baby cop with some old school hard dudes,
Hmm.
right? And I mean, they used to carry slapjacks in their back pocket. If you don't know what that is, it's two pieces of leather with a piece of lead sewn in it because they were handling business by themselves, right? Yeah, and so and it was that whole, you don't share anything personal about yourself. You keep the job at the job. You keep your home life at your home life.
Yeah, show up, shut up.
Yep. You don't mix the two. You do not mix the two. And that brings up another really great point. Uh, I never shared. I'm on my third marriage. My first two, I did just that, just what I was taught to do. I kept the job at the job, and I kept home at home. I didn't mix the two, and I think that era and that mindset, the idea is that, well, you're protecting your family from all the crap that you see at work. That's the mindset. But my third wife, I have shared with her from day one, because I think what I came to realize is that if you have a partner who has agreed to go on this your life journey with you, you have to trust that they are strong enough to handle the things that you see and go through, and that you need to be able to share with them those things. Uh, I think 99% of our partners know what they're getting into when they get involved with a first responder. I think they have a pretty good idea. Otherwise, they wouldn't be with you. They know who you are and what you are, or they probably wouldn't be with you to begin with. And I think that all first responders have to try and figure out a way that, what, hey, I'm not really protecting uh, my partner from anything. What I'm doing is I'm creating a ticking time bomb within myself that is going to jeopardize eventually my relationship with my partner, because I'm going to keep all this stuff bottled up, and I'm either going to self medicate, or I'm going to have a breakdown, or I'm going to become suicidal. And tragically, suicide is a big part of first responders in this
Yeah.
country. And I think we've got to, break down those old myths about keeping everything and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and keeping that tough exterior and building those walls. Heck, I've used my personal experience on the job in relating to people with mental health issues and stuff. And
100%.
I,
I
yeah,
think too, and I'm sorry if I cut you off. I didn't mean
no,
to.
no worries.
I think that, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but I've had this conversation a few times where the things that we went through at a period of time felt shameful, and you didn't want to share, that part of you. At least for me, like I didn't want people to know what I had gone through. Like I did shove it down and postured up, and to everyone on the outside, I was good. And then through your wellness journey and kind of that healing journey of being able to process those things and learn from them and grow in spite of them, and eventually we want everyone to be able to thrive, after the fact. But I think that those things become your superpower. And I think it takes a while to realize that. And it's not that I am necessarily happy that those things happened to me and my family and my life, but there is a sense of kind of gratitude that now I can take that and I can help others.
Right.
That sharing your story, it's kind of this ripple effect, right? It's someone can relate to you, and then it's going to give them the courage to share their story, which will help someone else. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying too about, you know, your sergeant helping you, which gave you the ability to help others. And I think it's a testament to leadership of saying, hey, like, it's not just one person, and it might feel that way. And sometimes it might feel discouraging. Like you were saying, I'm talking to this person and I don't know if they hear me or if they want me to talk to them, but I'm going to talk to them
Right.
anyway. And then later you find out that it had a positive impact on their life. And then that allows them to serve others and to have a positive impact on other people's life. And so it's a snowball effect that happens. And so, in a sense, there's a little bit of gratitude of like, yeah, like that was horrible and I wouldn't want that for anybody else, but I'm grateful that I'm where I am now and I have the ability to inspire and to help other people who have been through similar things as me. And I don't know if you feel that way at all. It took me a really, really long time to get comfortable enough to talk about things and to have that perspective of, you know what, like I'm gonna take this part and I'm gonna use it for good for others moving forward.
Actually, Paige, 100%. That's why I'm here right now today talking with you. When I saw your post on LinkedIn asking for input for your podcast, that's exactly why I was drawn to it and why I reached out to you. Is sometimes it's often it's kind of therapeutic for me to talk about this. Sometimes it's difficult. I still miss my mom every day. We were extremely close. And I get a little choked up when I talk about her. If but knowing how I felt during those really, really dark times, uh, it makes me extremely sad to know that one of my brother or sister officers or another responder is in that place without anybody reaching out to help them. And if just hearing my story gets them to maybe pick up the phone and go see somebody or reach out to somebody, then it's worth it. It's worth it. Uh,
100%.
yeah, that's all I want to do. That's kind of one of my in my with my retirement gig and uh, as I go through life now, it's kind of I'm in a great job now where I kind of get to do a lot of helping people, which I think a lot of us get in this business to begin with to do, and it turns into so much bad stuff that you have to look at and see, and you get so bitter and jaded with it. And I'm in a great position now, and so I look through social media and I can reach out to people that way and see things. I saw your post, and I'm extremely grateful to be able to get on this podcast with you and talk about these things. And if somebody hears this and uh, and reaches out for help, or it causes somebody to reach out to somebody else that they think needs help, if it emboldens them to push a little bit and go talk to somebody, or to contact somebody else and go, hey, so and so needs help. I don't know how to do it. What do we do? Then it's all worth it. It's
A
all
hundred
worth
percent, 100%. And I'm so grateful that you're here. And, when we first connected about this, that was the goal, is to share stories, to inspire others and to make sure everyone knows that they're not alone. I feel like it's kind of by design too. And you talked about this, we isolate, when
it. Yeah.
things
Oh, yeah.
are bad, we isolate. And I think when you're not in it, you can step outside of it. You logically can understand that you're not alone, but when you're in it, it's so hard to see that there are resources. You feel so alone and you feel, like you don't want to burden other people. And so having a platform to be able to have these discussions and realize that you're not alone and there are resources, I think is, the ultimate goal, and to potentially save lives. That's the goal. And not
Yeah.
just, and we talked about this before, and I've said this a couple of times, but it's not just like surviving, it's thriving. Like we want you to
Yeah.
have like the best life, and to be able to retire and have an amazing retirement, where you can do all the things that you want to do physically, mentally. You have, a support system and a family and all the things and that you want in life.
Yeah.
It's not just like how can we get you to survive? It's like how can we get you to thrive? And so I know that you and I I've heard really great things about Austin, and kind of being at the forefront of wellness, at least in Texas. And I know that they had a lot of resources. Do you think that there, regardless of any agency out there, do you still think that there's a stigma around asking for help and a stigma around wellness in this profession?
I think with the older generation of officers like myself, and maybe the ones coming up immediately behind us, yeah. The younger generation coming in, I'm not so sure about, just because I didn't get a chance to really work with a lot of them that
Mhm.
much. But I do think that one thing that the younger generations coming in behind me, or a couple of things that they do a whole lot better than we did, was I think they're better at self-care.
Mhm.
I think they're better at physical fitness and emotional well-being. And so hopefully that stigmatism is going away, but still, as I can't really speak to other first responders on this, but I know as cops, there's still an expectation of showing up and being in charge and handling business. And I think it's a natural step in the mind from there. Well, I have to be the one that always helps. I,
Right.
you know, I can't be the one asking for help. I have to be the one helping. I have to be the one protecting. I have to be
Yeah.
the one to be there for everybody. And I think that's the trap that everybody has fallen into over the years. I'm just hoping that the younger generations, with their being more self-aware of physical fitness and mental health fitness, that they're able to maybe see that trap door a little more clearly than we ever did, and maybe step aside from it. That's a really good question, though. I talked to my son about that. My oldest son, is 31 years old, and he's currently a full-time SWAT officer with Austin Police Department.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and
Nice.
so I, I think they are a little better at it. I think they're a little better about recognizing things in each other and doing something about it.
Yeah.
I don't think we were very good about. We might recognize an issue going on with somebody, but I don't feel like my generation of officers were very good about reaching out, but I don't want to get too personal with them. That's their business
Yeah.
kind of deal.
Yeah, and I think that we hear this a lot, and I'm super guilty of this, of like making sure that you take care of everyone else and you take care of yourself last. And, preaching wellness and, for all your loved ones and everyone around you, and then like your self-care kind of lacks. Like I've done that plenty of times in my life where I have to take a step back and be like, I I can't take care of people at my best ability if I don't take care of me first. And I think you're right. I do think that we've had a lot of conversations about this with the future generation of having more of like a work-life balance and really expecting certain things of agencies and expecting wellness programming and wanting the agency to take care of them from a wellness perspective. And I think that agencies have come a really long way of offering a lot of different things, like you said, peer support and um, EAP and a variety of different wellness resources. When it comes to building an organization of wellness, what do you think is the solve? Is it communication? Is it talking about it? I know you said like reaching out. Like, do you think it's that like on the ground level? Do you think it starts with leadership? What do you think is like if you could wave a magic wand would be the solution to creating a culture of wellness within an organization?
Yeah, I think it's definitely communication because one of the things that after I went through the bulk of my breakdown, if you will, I found that I had zero problem after I was healing in the healing process. I had zero problem about speaking up and show up with the other officers present or to anybody really about what I'd been through and about what we have to watch out for with each other. And I think so. Yeah, I think it's talking about it and being very open and honest about things,
Yeah.
and not keeping that facade up. You know, you have to go when you go in, and if you come in to show up or briefing, and you're not having a really good day, I think and somebody sees it. If you and I are on the same shift, and I see, hey, Paige, you okay? You don't look really. I think it's important for you to be confident and secure enough and have enough trust in me to go, and I had an argument with an aunt or a relative or something. It's kind of got me down. I'm like, all right, cool. Hey, sorry, it's cool if Paige and I ride double up tonight instead of going solo. Why? Just come on, Sarge. You know? Okay, yeah, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, and not stick you in a car by yourself to go out there and handle stuff to where you're put in a position of having to either, get that, okay, I got to shove this all back down and I got to handle business
Right.
and not dealing with it. Now we get in the car together and, hopefully call load permitting, I'm able to let you vent, ventilate and validate a little bit and get it out of your system. And if you need more, well, hey, Paige, I'll help you all I can, but I think you're going to need a little more once you reach out to peer support, or let's reach out to peer support together. I think we got to be honest with each other. You know,
Yeah.
that's
No,
the
I
key.
love that. And I think that through this podcast, that's been one of the things that has been common, is communication being the key,
Yeah,
like looking out for each other and being okay with talking about it. And I think that the more, and we even talked about this with the podcast, the more you can like talk about it and share stuff, then the more everyone can heal, as a community. And so I appreciate that feedback. I have two more questions for you. One
sure,
is a personal question.
sure.
Um, we know that our lives are like waves. There's so many different chapters and things evolve. What is your why right now in your career when it comes to wellness? Why is it important for you to prioritize your own personal wellness now? Which may look different from, what it was in the beginning of your career, but right now, what is your wellness why?
because I finally realized that if I'm not in the best shape physically and mentally that I can possibly be in, then there is no way that I can safely and in a helpful way hold space for anyone else.
100%. I love that. Thank you. And last question.
Uh-huh.
And we talked about this a little bit before. This is kind of the ending for all the podcast. What is your piece of advice? If you could give one piece of advice to someone who's early in the career, or to your 25-year-old self, starting out in this career when it comes to wellness, what would it be?
I think, and this is actually a piece of advice that when I was a field training officer that I gave to every rookie that I had. And I can, again, this is law enforcement specific. I can't speak to other first responders, but keep a circle of friends that you had before you came into law enforcement that are not in law enforcement.
Mhm.
They will help keep you grounded. They will hopefully see the changes as they take place in you and help you go through those changes in a healthy manner, because this job, this profession will change you. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And you need someone who knows your baseline going in to help keep you grounded.
Awesome. That's great advice. Thank you so much. Are there any final words, anything else that you want to share with our listeners before we sign off?
No, I just want to thank you so much for what you're doing and for inviting me on this podcast. I appreciate it greatly. Feel very honored to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate you as well. Thank you so much.
You,
Perfect. How was that?
that was good.
Good.
I
I
liked it.
liked it. Yeah, perfect. I usually stop the recording like right now. We'll edit it at the end. But sometimes we'll have like off conversations that end up having some like really good things in there.
Mhm.
So I'll end it at the end.
Okay.
But thank you. I appreciate your
The
time
end is
very
a good
much.
place to end
Yeah.
it.
I'll just leave it at the end. I'll like let it's like bloopers. Like people can just like listen to us bantering offline. But
Yeah.
thank you. I thought that that went great. I really appreciate you sharing all about your background. And like I said before, I everyone's story is so different,
Mhm.
but there's similarities, and it
Mhm.
does feel therapeutic to me to hear you talk about that because my lens was a little bit different. My dad was the abuser, and I was watching him abuse my stepmom and feeling that feeling of helplessness and thinking that she's going to die and not knowing what to do. And she had two young daughters that I was taking care of and trying to protect from, the situation. And remembering being in this like position of like, what do I do? And then having guilt for not having the courage to ask for help because it was my dad and I didn't want to call the police on my dad and I didn't. And then I had so much guilt around that because there was someone who needed my help and I was in a position to help and didn't. And so, have like even just that word of like the helplessness was exactly like how I felt. And it really was, it created a level of connectedness, I think, when you were saying that of like, there are people who know. And I think for me, it was so hard growing up because I didn't have any friends or family who knew what I had been through. Like they had never experienced anything like that. And so it was even more isolating to not have anyone in my circle. And of course, you don't want anyone else to have had to have gone through that, but it was really
Right.
hard because I grew up in a really like affluent area and a lot of my friends were really privileged and they had no idea what it was like to have, an incarcerated parent and experience domestic violence and so that made me feel even more alone. And so like we said before, just shoving it down and posturing up and learning to survive and I'm okay and everything's okay.
Yeah.
And then, you talking about later in your life, kind of how you dealt with that was also very connecting for me because it was the same, it was like just distract yourself as much as you possibly can and isolate and, but don't let anyone else see it on the surface because
Yeah.
that wouldn't be good. So I appreciate you, like is the long short of it. I really do appreciate you sharing that. It takes a lot of courage and strength to do that. And I do think that we have the ability to inspire and help others through our stories. And I think it's something that I was so uncomfortable with for a long time. Like I still wanted the perception that I was perfect. And now I feel like the relatability is in the experiences and the messy parts are, like I said before, and I say it all the time, it's like your superpower. And I really do think like in a way we have superpowers, through our life experiences. So
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. And of course, I hope you realize that now that what you're a survivor of now, you were a victim then also. You were just as much a victim as your stepmom.
mm,
But now you're a survivor. That's like, I don't know if you noticed, that's how I refer to my wife, is she's a survivor of child sexual abuse.
yeah,
And she's such a strong woman, and I have the utmost respect for her. And she's very open about what she went through, and she talks about it. So that's why I know she wouldn't mind me mentioning it here. And I just think it's funny that God has put the two of us together, and I'll come out of my therapy because I still go to therapy once a month. I used to do it virtually. My therapist moved to Arizona. I was like, I do not want to go through that again. It's
dang
just,
Arizonans.
yeah, I know, right? Probably a little on the crazy side too.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Wait, ASU?
I partied at ASU,
Yeah,
but
there you go.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I went to community college. I went to Mesa and Scottsdale Community, but my best friend went to ASU, so I feel like I got the
Okay.
best of both worlds, yeah.
Yeah, I went to JUCO. So. Yeah, but yeah, and it's just I forgot where I was going with that, but I just want you to know that hey, you got to realize, hey, you were a victim then too. It took me a while to realize that crap, I was a victim too, and I wanted to point out something that the EMDR did too. I focused on all the years, all the bad things, and about how I didn't help. I didn't do anything to help my mom. 4 and 5 years old, but
Right.
still, and especially as I got older and I looked at myself back then as like a little coward. And but going through the EMDR, I remember there was one incident in particular that we went over, and I remembered things that had completely been suppressed, that I had completely and totally forgotten about. That after this particular incident, my mom was bleeding everywhere, there's blood everywhere. That I went and I got a rag and I helped try and stop the bleeding. I dragged my stool up to the phone and I called her friend and told her, hey, mom's bleeding. She needs to go to the doctor. And she came over and picked us both up and took her to the doctor. I'd forgotten all that.
Yeah.
I had zero recollection of that. But now I'm like, okay, well, I guess I did try to help. I did do something on all. And
Yeah.
so that's,
And that's amazing how like our brains are wired to kind of protect us in a way.
mhm.
And I think that's maybe the most intimidating part of EMDR is like, and I'll kind of backtrack a little bit too, because I had a moment, this was when I was going through my like yoga training, and I had thought that I had done a lot of the work. And it's an ongoing thing. But I had a teacher that made us all sit in a circle and meditate silently. And this is why I think that I'm so sensitive to trauma and PTSD. And we talk about meditation being positive, and it is. It's very positive, very beneficial. But we have to be considerate of trauma. and PTSD because you tell someone who has either to sit in silence, especially in a public setting,
Mhm.
it could be detrimental, and that's what it was for me. I remember like sitting here and I was having like flashbacks. I was so uncomfortable and like forced to be in this position. And as soon as it was done, I like ran out the door and was totally hysterical. And afterwards, I talked to my teacher and told him I was like, one, like I don't want to meditate because I don't want to know what's down there. Like
Right,
it's down there for a reason.
right,
And I'm scared. I remember like looking at him, I'm like, I'm scared. I don't want to know what's in there. And he said, if you can't sit with yourself, how can you expect anyone else to sit with you? And I was like, whoa, like it like was kind of this eye opening moment where I was like, yeah, like he's right. Like if I want people to like be there for me and I want like partners and friends and like, meaningful relationships, like I have to like work on me. Like I have to like me and work through that stuff. And so I think that with EMDR, it's kind of a similar situation where I think it could be really intimidating of like, hey, it's down there for a reason. I'm scared. I don't want to know what is in there because at least for me, and I don't know if anyone else can relate to it, but I have a horrible memory. And I think it's my body's reaction to survival. Like I think it was like, hey, we're gonna block out a lot of this stuff because there's really like almost like years of black, like where I don't even know. And then there's moments where I remember them very vividly and certain events that I remember very vividly. And so I think that would be very interesting to go through. Like I'm open, I'm on board, I want to do it.
yeah,
And I think it'd be really interesting to see what comes out and what my brain blocked out of my memory for a reason, and I think um that could be really healing, like you said, of being like, no, like I wasn't a coward. I did help.
right, right.
Um, and so I'm on board, but I could see how it could be intimidating of not wanting to relive it and not wanting to know what's down there. But I've heard such good things about it. Like I've had so many people in law enforcement say that it was like 100% game changer, like the best thing that they've ever done. So,
And just talking with you, I already know you weren't a coward because you were protecting those other two girls. I
mm,
mean, you were trying to keep them safe and away from that. That I mean, but that's not something probably you really think about. What
yeah, you're
that
gonna
you were
make
just
me cry. Thank you for saying that. Honestly, I've never thought of it that way. That got me emotional. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
simply.
But I really, like I said, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing your story, and I it'll take me a couple weeks to get everything together, but I'll share everything with you and
Okay.
some highlight clips and everything, and you can do whatever you want with it. And again, if there's anything that you're like, we want to cut this out, I'm happy to edit. I did want to ask one question, just kind of like totally sidecar question. How do
Sure.
you feel about your son being in law enforcement? Is it something where like you are really excited about it? Do you feel like hesitation? Like, how do you feel about him following in your footsteps?
I am so proud of him. I can't imagine I have people that I still know in the department that I run into or I talk to, and they immediately start bragging on, man, your son's good to go. He's a great cop. He's got great instincts, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, I'm super proud of him. Initially, I tried to talk him into using his GI Bill and stuff to become a trauma nurse because he has a servant's heart.
Mhm.
He really does. He was in the Marine Corps. And when he got out and worked some different jobs till he figured out what he wanted to do, he worked in the jail just like I did for a little while. And then he used his GI Bill to go to school, became an EMT. He worked on an ambulance for, oh gosh, 3, 4 years, 5 years, I guess. And then he rode with a buddy of his who had gone to work in Austin at Austin PD. And he went and did a ride out with him. And after that ride out, he just decided, he's like, yeah, I think I'm going to put him to go to Austin PD. And I'm like, when it came graduation day, it was like he was class president of the cadet class, and which is a huge, huge thing there.
Hmm.
He has excelled immensely, and I'm just so proud of him. Do I worry about him? I think I worry about this kind of stuff,
Hmm.
emotional and mental health stuff more than anything because he's about as tactical as anybody can be. I mean, I basically it's a case where the teacher has become the student. If we go shoot together or something now, I'm constantly asking him questions. He's
That's
helping
awesome.
train me because I mean he's full time SWAT. I mean his experience in the Marine Corps. He's very tactical. He can take care of himself. I don't worry about him too much physically, and especially now that he's on SWAT. Of course, then it didn't help that not too long after he got on, or he wasn't full time yet. He was on the gold team, which is um, part time SWAT. One of the guys that went through SWAT school with him, they went to a hostage rescue deal, and he was killed during the entry.
Mm.
Uh, and then of course I had to deal with him because he was still there. I actually just happened to be at his place going out there to go deer hunting. And so I've got his crying wife. I'm holding her and stuff. That could have been my husband. And it's that time that I realized, and I'm like, no, that could not have been your husband. And she kind of looked at me. I said, he is too squared away. I said, he knows what he's doing. He's good at his job. And absolutely could not have been your husband. He's good.
Mm.
But at the same time, I'm thinking, shit, that could have been my son.
Yeah,
Because
it's tough.
yeah, and I found out later on the deal that some of it was just a bad deal. Somebody was going to get hurt or killed on it, and unfortunately, George did. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I knew him. I had worked with him in my sector. He was on an evening shift. He had actually trained on our shift, so I knew him as well. Good guy. So it's very sad.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy that you're proud of your son and that you have the confidence in him and that he's standing on his own 2 feet and he's working for an agency that has resources for the mental stuff. And he has a dad who has been through it and, knows resources that have helped, you. And so I I think he's set up for success. The
Yeah.
agency's got him, you got him, he's got himself. So I love that. I just wanted to ask you, how you felt about that because we've had so many conversations where, you know, all of the law enforcement that I talk to, they're like, I really didn't want them to do that. Like I really tried
Well,
to
yeah.
encourage them to do something else, but
Most of us are like, be a firefighter. We're 21, you're 48 off. You have a whole other career while you're doing it. Be a firefighter. You
yeah.
know?
Yeah, but they're gonna do what they want to do. And so
Yeah,
I'm glad that you're proud of him and that
I
he's
am.
doing good for himself. So
I tell you
but
though, I worry about all the law enforcement in Travis County though, because I don't know if you're familiar. There's a district attorney that was a Soros funded district attorney, and he ran on a platform of prosecuting police officers. And
mm,
yeah, he's one of the reasons that district attorney is the reason I retired when I did.
Jesus.
Mentally I couldn't take it anymore. I left a lot of money on the table. I was on the promotion list, and I had a blow up one day, and I was like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. My wife says it's time for you to go. And I
Yeah,
said, yeah, I think so. And my heart bleeds for those men and women that are still up there dealing with it.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. I don't want to take any more of your time. I know we're running over, but I'm a resource for you. So keep in touch. I know that we're friends on LinkedIn and everything. So as soon as I get everything finished, I'll send it over to you. And
Oh
yeah,
yeah, thanks. And I'd love to know when it's going to air because I've my wife's already asked me when it's going to air and stuff, and a couple other people have asked me when it was going to air, and so yeah, I'd
awesome.
like to get them to listen in.
I'll definitely let you know. Give me a little bit of time, especially at the
Oh yeah.
holidays, but I'll let you know as soon as it'll probably be couple weeks. If I can get it out second week of December before the holidays, I will. If not, it'll be like beginning of January. So,
Yeah, I really wasn't going to surprise me if it was the first part of the year.
okay, I
You know,
appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. Because I know this is just a very hectic time of the year for most folks, for everybody, for all of us, personally and professionally. So yeah,
Yeah,
no worries.
awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'll keep in touch and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, Paige. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.